Well, the United States Embassy in Nigeria and the British High Commission have both sent citizens in Nigeria warning of an impending terrorist attack in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. The U.S. Embassy had disclosed that targets for the attacks include government buildings, places of worship, schools, markets, shopping malls, hotels, bars, restaurants, athletic gatherings, transport terminals, law enforcement facilities, and international organizations. It is not the first time the Nigerian government has received this kind of intel. Today on VSA, we measure and discuss the impact of such announcements on the security of the country and how it impacts citizens, reactions, and what it means to local agencies. Welcome to The Square. I'm Sulaiman. Following the security alert by the United States Embassy in Nigeria to U.S. citizens in Abuja on planned terrorist attack, the Department of State Services has called on Nigerian citizens to be alert and remain calm. The spokesperson, Peter Afunaya, says, well, it is working with other law enforcement agencies and stakeholders to maintain the peace in Abuja and beyond. Well, 2 months ago, the country's capital, Abuja, witnessed a major terror attack when hundreds of suspected criminals and terrorists were set free at a custodial center in Kuje, that's a prison, while after it was attacked by insurgents of the Islamic State of West Africa province, ISWAP. The attack was described by many security experts as one of the most daring in the history, and experts have warned that the release of the suspected terrorists will worsen the security situation in Nigeria's capital territory. Now, amid rising insecurity and the constant loss of lives and property in the country, we ask again, what's the way forward? When does it end? With me, as always, Kemini. Kevin, good to see you, and thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. How are you?
Well, I'm good. I know it's not a time for many across Nigeria and on the continent to smile, but again, the warning is coming, and it's something that no one should discard, with a wave of hand, and that is why we're looking at this. But by and large, it looks like as if the experts and the country need to do more to enlighten the people so that people can be on the watch.
Absolutely, and it's a good thing to hear the DSS and the police come out to tell people we're on the matter, keep calm and stay alert at the same time. But hopefully our guest tonight will tell us if we've been doing enough to keep people safe in the country. Right?
Yeah. Well, joining us from Nigeria's capital is Kabir Adamu. He's a security risk management and intelligence specialist. Pretty much later we'll have Commodore Abimbola Ayuba to join us. Abimbola Ayuba is an international security risk management consultant. By and large, I think we have the experts in the house today. Kabir, good to see you, and thanks for your time as always. Well, this is again coming as a big shock and a surprise to some. But again, from the security community, is anyone surprised?
Good evening, Abimbola and Sulay. I'm delighted to be back on the square once again. Unfortunately, though, the topic we usually discuss when I'm invited is not a topic that makes one smile. But having said that, we have to do what we have to do. Surprise, no, but then there are emerging questions, as it were. Yes, like you reeled out in your introductory remarks, there have been instances in the past when both the U.S. Embassy, the British High Commission, other countries issue alerts like that, issue travel warnings, and name them. Nigeria does the same for her citizens in other parts of the world. A good example is just last week or over the weekend, the Diaspora Commission released an advisory for Cyprus for Nigerian students who are either there or about to travel there. So it's an obligation on any country to share any intel that it has that could affect the safety or security of its citizens. And I think that's something we need to establish. Second point is there are protocols, there are laws that determine international relations. And one of the key principles of international relations is the non-interference in internal politics of nations. And that's why you have rules of establishment where diplomatic relationships are established. And then that diplomatic relation is guided by certain principles. Now, one of them, for instance, is where, for instance, you've got intelligence and you are a friendly ally, as it were, to that country, you share that intelligence. So I have listened to some members of the intelligence community asking that question. Did the US share its intelligence, as an example, to Nigeria? If it did, why did the Nigerian intelligence community not release any alert, any warning to citizens? And that warning had to come from Western embassies. Like I said, the US released. So these are some of the things that have come up. The third point, which is also absolutely important, is the reaction. So we've seen a reaction from the SSS, like you indicated. We've also seen another reaction from the police. Now, if you pick those reactions with a fine tooth, like I did, you would discover that they were not corroborations of the US alert. They acknowledged that there was an alert by the US embassy in Nigeria, but at nowhere within that alert did they say that they were privy to intelligence that suggested an imminent attack. So that brings us to the possibility of issues surrounding the 2023 elections, and that is the point I would like to make. We need to be extremely careful. Statements like this would have a consequences on the 2023 elections. They could determine the outcome, especially if we consider that security is one of the primary factors driving the campaign ahead of the elections. Remember, in 2014, it happened. Security was a principal determinant of the outcome of the elections. 2019, the same thing. In 2023, it's going to be the same thing. So the likelihood of security being used as a factor is extremely impossible. Now, time again will tell us whether this is a legit warning or unfortunately is one of those acts that could be used to determine outcomes that certain countries want.
Well, if we could stay on the bit about intel sharing for just the next few minutes, tell us how it makes the Nigerian security look when it would appear that citizens will hear from these foreign arms before they hear from the government.
So there are different types of intelligence. The best intelligence is what is called actionable intelligence. Now, actionable intelligence would have provided you all the imperatives: what, when, where, how, and you can take action to prevent that issue from happening. Now, in this instance, based on the response of both the police and DSS, it's very clear that there was no actionable intelligence. Also based on the alerts by the US government and the British High Commission, it's also very likely that there was no actionable intelligence. Now, the other types of intelligence are intelligence that could forewarn. In other words, you've picked up through your different collection capabilities of a certain threat, and then you issue perhaps this type of alert. What we don't know, and it's very difficult really to establish, is whether there was any corroboration of this kind of suggestion that there's intelligence. And I'm saying this because I'm speaking from a professional point of view. We misuse the word intelligence, significantly in Nigeria. A lot of people use intelligence without actually understanding what intelligence means. In this instance, if you are going out to press to issue something as significant as this, it is assumed that you've already, ticked all the boxes around the veracity of that information, the consequence of that information. Now, to the second part of your question, what are the established protocols for the sharing of intelligence? Now, for foreign countries with a host country, especially if it's a friendly country, there is what is called liaison, intelligence liaison. Now, the intelligence liaison are done through platforms. This is a public fora, so I don't want to speak too much about it, but there is an established platform where that friendly country would share that intelligence, of course, with certain conditions regarding the sharing of that intelligence. And it is almost obligatory on the part of the foreign country, in this instance, to share that with the host country. And I emphasize the word an ally, where you are dealing with an ally. In this instance, the emanator of that intelligence is an ally, the US government. They are allies to the Nigerian authorities. So we expected that something like that would have happened. And based on my checks within the intelligence community in Nigeria, we're not aware that something like that happened.
Okay, let me welcome Mike Ejiofor. Mike Ejiofor, good to see you. He's a retired director of the State Security Services, and he's been one of the very few Nigerians who's always given his time and energy to speaking about security. Mike, good to see you again. And quickly here, you know, the DSS has sent these warnings in the past. It's not the first time the DSS will be sending warnings to many across the country, but it would seem as if Nigerians will take such warnings with levity. How is it that now we are so serious about this?
This is my first time of appearing on News Central with you, and I think I'm glad to be back with you. The issue we are discussing is a very serious one. You recall that severally the State Security Service have issued advisories even before this time. And I must point out one thing here. There's always collaboration between the other countries resident in Nigeria, like the United States and UK, for instance, who have issued this advisory. The advisory, of course, is not meant for Nigerians. The advisory is meant for their nationals to guide them, you know, in terms of looking at where the areas they have to visit. And that is why the State Security Service came out with assurances for Nigerians to remain calm. But remaining calm will not stop the solution. The State Security Service has advised that not just to remain calm, but assist the security agencies, observe the environment, and see what you can do to assist the security agencies. I've always said it, that we should not leave security challenges to our security agencies alone. That is not to say that we should underplay the advisory. But I must say that we have roles as citizens to play in terms of looking at our environment and making reports and contacts to various security agencies. So I can assure you there's nothing to worry about, but we must be vigilant in terms of looking out for.
You know, let me stay with you for a bit, Ejiofor, before I go back to Kabir. You know, when we say nothing to worry about, Nigerians are already worried. Keep in mind, it was only after the jailbreak at the Kuje prison in Nigeria's capital that many realized that even the DSS and other agencies, specifically the DSS, had warned of an impending attack. Still, it happened. So, how can Nigerians take this to the bank, saying that, look, we can close with our eyes, we can sleep with our eyes closed, because the DSS has said, well, nothing to worry about?
You know, just like Kabir said, it's not just enough to provide intelligence. What are the capacities and capabilities of our security agencies in tackling these problems? Are they fully equipped to handle the challenges? You know, I can tell you that it's not only in the security subsector, but we are worried because without security, there won't be any meaningful development. You have to have a peaceful environment for people to carry out their duties. So that is why security is very, very challenging, and people are disturbed because any slight jolt in the system adversely affects the community. But what I'm saying in effect is that we'll continue to monitor the situation. The government also have to assist the security agencies in fulfilling its statutory obligations in terms of funding, training. But we are not talking about training and funding now because we have crisis in our hands. We recall the Abuja rail attack. Luckily for us, all the victims have been released through the concerted efforts of our security agencies. what should be concentrated is to prevent these things from happening. It's not just sufficient for us to, they need collaboration between all the security agencies. They need to collaborate to see how these matters go. Actually, a few days ago, I think because of this alert, if you go to some areas in Abuja, you can see that there is intensive checks by the police, especially at night. These are measures put in place to ensure that these things are checked and not just supporting them or providing intelligence without acting on them.
Right. Now, previous attacks, especially in the early 2010s, had similar contexts whereby, the warnings come. What have we learned as a country, Kabir?
The platforms through which these warnings are circulated, as it were, social media platforms, websites, and then I don't know if you followed what happened in the recently concluded Kenyan elections. There was a lot of discussions around the cyberspace. And I would like to focus my response to that specifically. The cyberspace has become a veritable platform for influencing. Now, there are three major ways to do that. And I'm sorry, I'm going to become a little bit technical. I'll try and break it down. Propaganda, disinformation, and misinformation have become principal tools for influencing outcomes during elections using the cyberspace. Now, unfortunately, sometimes we keep on forgetting that in international relations, there is only one permanent interest, which is the interest of the country in question. And in the case of Nigeria, given the size of our population, the size of our economy, our geostrategic importance, it's very likely that certain countries, and starting from the US to places like Europe, Britain as an example, and China, would have serious interest in terms of the outcome of the 2023 election. And one key area where it's very easy for them to use as an avenue would be the cyber space, using these three tools that I've mentioned: propaganda, disinformation, and misinformation. So what have we learned from 2014, 2019 up until now? Not so much. I know we've attempted to invest in cyberspace in terms of the monitoring and the gathering of intelligence within that space. But there is still a long way to go in terms of understanding and managing the risk associated with the cyberspace vis-a-vis the outcome of elections.
Kabir, let me, excuse me, let me quickly bring in Ejiofor here. Ejiofor, listening to both of you, many Nigerians are asking what exactly is wrong with sensitization. Time was when specifically your service, the DSS, or once a member is always a member, went out by giving the slogan, see something, say something. Almost on a weekly basis, Nigerians were enlightened, Nigerians were giving feedback, Nigerians were being fed to the extent that people started giving information to the service. What's gone wrong? Suddenly, all that disappeared.
No, it's wrong to say that it disappeared, because I still recall that the State Security Service still put up adverts, advising people to get to the service through dedicated lines. And nothing has gone wrong, but like I said, it's very important that the people have roles to play and reach out to the service. So we are not. I'm not saying that the service is not reaching out to people by saying something, They have always reached out to the people, and they continue to maintain.
Sorry to cut you here. Let me make it a little bit clearer. Sorry to butt in here, Mike Ejiofor. Let me make it a little bit clearer. Perhaps we're looking at the terror alert system. Perhaps looking at the codes. Is it that it has reduced, and that is why? Because what I meant, time was when, on a weekly basis, there was a reporting feedback from the DSS with the NOA, National Orientation Agency. It was a weekly and a collaboration with the police at that point in time, I'm sure you recall. So some would love to see something in that light, except you're saying that the terror threshold is greatly reduced at the moment.
No, you remember that at that time you were talking about, we had this National Information Center comprising all the agencies and the National Orientation Agency, where all this information in terms of sensitization of the people and giving out information are coordinated. I think it's better we still review and bring up this center, the National Information Center. I think when this government came up, I think that center was dissolved. We need to reach out to the people because, like I've always said, security is not the alone responsibility of the security agency. We need collaboration from members of the public. We need collaboration. A situation where you see, like Kabir said, you see a situation where people just come and issue statements without even having the facts or going to it kind of, aggravates the situation. Through social media, you see the way this advisory has been circulated. The advice was actually, like I said when we started, was for the foreign nationals, not minding that you still have this collaboration between the foreign intelligence agencies and Nigeria with the NIA. But the point I'm making is that we need to still reinvigorate that center and reduce the number of statements being issued by top government forces.
Well, I think there seemed to be a glitch leading, I think, to the connection to Mike Ejiofor. Let me quickly bring in Kabir here before we get that sorted out. Kabir, I'm happy Ejiofor has said that there is need for us, for the country, to bring back that national coordination, in terms of managing information. Keep in mind, Kabir, we saw what happened in northern Nigeria, specifically about the death of the cleric, the Muslim cleric, and how much of involvement, information that they got from the villagers in that particular part of Nigeria. Now, do you think we're doing enough to really sensitize the people, irrespective of places? In this case, we're talking about Nigeria's capital, Abuja, where the education and awareness level should be very much higher than what we have seen. But it seems as if the locals in these other places are more enlightened and aware than the people who live in big cities. Kabir.
This is a beautiful question, and Hamad, thank you for highlighting it. Intelligence is grassroots. It's one of the few things where you don't start from the top to the bottom. In intelligence, you start from the bottom and build a picture that you use at the top. There is no two ways about this. In very rare cases, you can have a privileged source that is in a position to share such intelligence with you. But the best intelligence is intelligence that is harnessed from the grassroots. And unfortunately, that is what we've missed as a country. And this is structural. I'm very happy that we're in a pre-election year, and I'm hoping that the candidates in the 2023 elections are listening to this. Anyone who is discussing security, and thankfully there's going to be a debate, and I hope that Philly and your team, you have the opportunity to ask them questions around this. If they promise to change security, one of the things I'm hoping to hear is how they are going to revamp the intelligence community. In today's Nigeria, the intelligence community, yes, it's playing a very good role. In certain instances, you hear where intelligence has been provided, but in other instances, unfortunately, the role is not as good as it should be. And I'll explain what I mean. When 100 girls are stolen from a school, think about the essentials that will be required to keep those 100 girls, irrespective of where they're being kept. There are certain basic items that must be obtained. So the type of intelligence I'm envisaging is a collection capability that would take into consideration the grassroots level, where, for instance, if a woman who is selling akara, he sells it, usually, let's say, for 1,000 naira, and then all of a sudden she starts selling for 1,000 naira, and a security event has happened in that incident, we should have the kind of intelligence that will pick up that change immediately and then start looking into it. Now, that is the level of intelligence that we need to have at that grassroots level, so that patterns that are not in variance with our usual way of doing things, we are able to pick them almost immediately. We don't have that at the moment, unfortunately. Now, that's not to say that we do not have certain capabilities within the intelligence cycle. We do have. All I'm saying is that we need to change the priorities in such a manner that they are useful to our modern day existence. The emphasis at the moment is on certain organizations. A good example is the military. The military is not cut out for grassroots intelligence. By its very nature, the military carries out certain operations that are meant to protect, especially our territorial integrity. The other agencies, such as the SSS and the Ministry of Interior and all the organizations under the Ministry of Interior, they are better suited. So I'm hoping to see a restructuring that will allow these organizations carry out their mandate to the latter of obtaining grassroots intelligence. Now, the second component, intelligence, is a cycle. The last, not the last anyway, the pinnacle of that cycle is talks about dissemination of intelligence. Now, dissemination should have a feedback mechanism into it. And I think this was the point you were trying to make earlier on, Sule, when you talked about a strategic unit within government that manages how government officials release information. Now, that dissemination function is absolutely important. In the past, in your program, I've advised that we should have maybe a standard unit like the UK has, that has an eye over the dissemination of intelligence, so that if intelligence is issued to a particular organization and that organization does not use that intelligence, there should be consequences. Currently, we don't have that. We issue intelligence, they don't use it, people are either kidnapped or sometimes killed, and nothing happens to those individuals. A good example is the Ministry of Transportation and the Railway Corporation. There was ample evidence that intelligence was provided to them on the Abuja-Kaduna route. They did not take action. That route was attacked. Several of our citizens were abducted. Some of them stayed for months with those abductors, and not one single person was held accountable. And so if we have a unit that has that type of oversight and that is able to monitor and advise consequences where that type of impunity happens, I think the feedback mechanisms that has to do with dissemination would be addressed. And that means, for instance, the bite within the intelligence community would be returned. In certain countries, you don't do that. If you do it, there will be consequences.
Let me allow Mike Ejiofor to give his closing comment before we go on the break, because I understand he has some other engagements. So, Mike, what more would you like Nigerians and the security agencies to know or do as we look towards fighting the bad guys?
Well, for now, just apart from the advisory, I must use this opportunity on this occasion to advise our politicians from making provocative, divisive statements. And we must all watch out. You recall the attack on Senator Ayuba, and only last weekend there was another attack on Pastor from Auchi.
Apostle Sulaiman.
Sulaiman, yes. So our politicians must play by the rules. And I'm happy when INEC said that these politicians are not playing by the rules. And there's a need to summon them, reminding them of that undertaking, the peace accord. Because the way things are going, we might witness very violent elections. The reasons are obvious. Now, you cannot read, you cannot carry ballot box. Our votes are going to count. So they must look for every way to disrupt the smooth conduct of the election. So my message is that politicians, on their own part, must play by the rules. And our citizens must expose all those politicians who are out to disrupt the system, because they are, first of all, if they cannot get it by genuine means, the most important for them is to disrupt the system and see that we don't conduct smooth elections.
All right, okay, Mike Ejiofor. All right, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I do hope that you find time again in the foreseeable future to join us and speak more on issues concerning Nigeria and the continent. We'll take a moment now on VSA. We'll be back shortly, and Kabir Adamu is still here, and hopefully Abimbola Ayuba will be joining us then. Stay with us.
On roads, at airports, on rail tracks, in marketplaces, and even military bases, there's an infiltration of terrorists. The infiltration of heavy and light weapons into Nigeria has also been a matter of contention. Suggestions of possible solutions have been made. Experts have spoken. Retired security officials have also urged their opinions and made suggestions. Yet, the country still struggles to stay peaceful. The solutions are not yet seen, and the situation has only worsened. So what's the way forward? Still with us here on the program is Kabir Adamu and Commodore Abimbola Ayuba, who's just joining us also via Zoom. And so let's take the question to you. Let's welcome you with a question, Commodore. Nigerian government has accepted repentant terrorists over the years. Do you think that this move has helped the situation? And if indeed these people are rehabilitated?
Thank you very much for having me. I'm not sure I had the earlier part of the question, but I want to believe that you are asking whether how Nigeria should be responding to intel from foreign embassies.
No, Commodore, I'm asking, Commodore, we've moved a bit from that conversation. I'm asking about you rehabilitated insurgent fighters who the Nigerian government has taken and rehabilitated over the years. Has this worked for the country?
Commodore Ayuba,
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, Commodore Ayuba, what Kemini, I hope you can hear us. She's asking about those that have been pardoned in the country and given some form of rehabilitation. Do you think it did make sense in a country where terror is being fought?
There are two sides of the coin. Pardoning terrorists, it's not the right way to go by international best practices, particularly when they have committed crimes that are infringing on the Constitution of the Federal Republic. They must be made to pay for the crimes they've committed. And while they are incarcerated, reformation can take place, correction can take place, and then when it is certain that they have fully repented, then they can then be released to society under close watch, And this is my view on this, and I believe that should be the standard. But leaving people out after just doing a few months training and believing that they will be loyal to the system is not the right way to go.
Kabir, let's come to you. I'm just wondering what you also think about these rehabilitated insurgents. But while you are at it, could you also tell us your opinion on why there seemed to also be a surge in foreign fighters in Nigeria?
Okay, so my understanding is that as part of our counter-terrorism strategy, we have a de-radicalization program. Now, that de-radicalization program was taken to the international community under the platform of the UN. I remember very well. It started under the administration of Goodluck Bele Jonathan. At that time, the current DG of the World Trade Organization was the then foreign minister. She took that strategy to the UN General Assembly precisely in September, either 2012 or 2013, presented that strategy to the world, and it was endorsed by the world. And as a result, we had several international players contributing to the fund for the implementation of that counterterrorism strategy. Now, as a result of that, we started what has been now called Operation Safe Corridor. And the idea behind Operation Safe Corridor is to identify repentant terrorists, put them through a program. They will be exposed to several components of de-radicalization. And then once it's determined after a period of about 6 months that the program is successful, then they will be rehabilitated.
Has it benefited the country?
Well, the benefit is obvious. Currently, we have about 80,000 persons who have accepted this so-called strategy and are currently being profiled by both the Borno state government and the Nigerian military, to the extent that the Nigerian military is seeking for help on what to do with this number of persons. So the program has largely been successful. However, there is a proviso. The proviso is this. What I presented to you is the theory. In practice, we do not know if what they are doing is actually what has been indicated in that framework of the de-radicalization program. In other words, there hasn't been any independent evaluation and verification of what they said they are going to do and what was actually taken out. I've had the good fortune of interacting with several persons who had a hand in that program. And one of the key questions is the role of the military in the program. Yes, the military is a key player, but the current status, what appears to be seen is that the military is the eye and the ears and the front of that program. And I don't think that was the intention of those who came up with that program when they did. So bottom line, I believe that the de-radicalization program is a component of our counterterrorism strategy, but I'm unable, under the current information at my disposal, to verify whether what we said we are going to do is what we're actually doing. And so it's difficult.
Kabir, we're going to have to start to run at this point. So let me bring Commodore back into the conversation. Commodore, what are your expectations after these alerts have been issued? Your expectations of our security agencies at this point?
Oh, well, from my own lens of observation and having worked also on led the consultants into the Borno area, we came out to find out that this method of the radicalization process conducted by Operation Safe Corridor is not the best approach. It's not the international best practice to it. Yes, the countering violent extremism is key. For those who have been found out not to have committed very grievous crimes, they could be taken into custody to be rehabilitated. But those who have committed genocide, those who have been known to kill and attract people, must be made to face the penalty for their crimes.
So Commodore, can you hear me? About the recent US-UK alerts to citizens residents in Nigeria, what would you expect the security agencies to be doing at this point so that it does not become an imminent threat?
Well, it's a good thing that we have alerts. The internal security system also has its own mechanisms to evaluate the levels of security and, of course, measure the threshold in which to begin to close down the system in response to threats that such as terrorist attacks, imminent terrorist attacks. So having additional information from the United States Embassy in Nigeria, as well as the British High Commission, it's also value added for us to quickly close the gaps, the loopholes, which abound, especially in the Federal Capital Territory, which appears to be a bit lapsed compared with when the issue of terrorism came in firsthand. People move freely, the environment appears very porous. So there's need for us to now raise the security alert and the levels of security so that we prevent any form of a surprise attack. And that is why I say we have good fortune to get the right intel and in good time. This is my standpoint on this.
Right, Kabir, security will be a great talking point in the elections. What should Nigerians be looking out for as far as that subject is concerned in their next commander-in-chief?
I mean, the provisions of the Section 14, subsection 2 is very clear. The primary responsibility of government is to provide security. So that's what Nigerians should be looking out for. Which leader will tell them in a clear manner, not a political manner, how they are going to be protected. And I'll explain quickly what I mean. Which leader is going to state in a very clear manner how he intends to withdraw this almost about 40% of policemen that are currently deployed and doing commercial functions, either to VIPs or to banks, and redeploy them to do real policing functions for the whole, not for a select few. Which leader is going to create a military that is capable, that has light force mobility, and that has force multipliers in terms of communication, in terms of gadgets, in terms of intel, to deal with the current threats that we have in the country? Which leader is going to revamp the intelligence community in the manner that I've described earlier on, so that we now have grassroots intelligence that is not just effective, but that is efficient? Which leader is going to talk about human security and not necessarily state security, so that the objective is to protect the life of the person in the village and not necessarily the life of the person, only the life of the person in the urban centers? Now, that is the kind of message and narrative I hope to hear going into the elections.
Right.
Now, let me quickly jump in here, because some of the key things Nigerians will be asking is there a nexus to the coming elections in the country, looking at what threat we have at the moment? It looks like almost every eve of an election year, Nigerians are being warned. Let's start with you, Abimbola Ayuba.
Thank you very much, Sulai. Electoral violence is significant in terms of impending elections. You are quite right that almost every eve of a new election, the threshold of security begins to be threatened. And of course, we are beginning to see manifestations of these groups, political groups clashing. We had reports in Kaduna and also recently in Lagos. So it's important that, like Kabir has also observed, that policing should now be, the level of policing should be raised to the extent that we, the people, the ordinary man in the village, can enjoy some relative peace and security and not to be threatened, because once you create fear or intimidation, then the definition of national security is already breached. Sulai.
All right, and Kabir, let's wind down on this. I think more or less the same. Politics, security, and of course the people. Where do we come in here, looking at what we're dealing with at the moment in Nigeria?
Well, if you're referring to the people, by being vigilant and asking the right questions and not allowing sentiments, especially of a religious or ethnic nature, carry us away or divert our attention from the developmental challenges that we have. For me, that's my greatest concern at the moment. The lead up to the elections is being overtaken by these two elements, to an extent religion, and then of course ethnicity. And if we allow that to continue, then what they are going to do is pull a wool over our eyes, so that we don't focus on the developmental challenges that are affecting us. We have developmental challenges. They are biting, us. If you've bought rice recently, you know what I mean. If you bought gas recently, you know what I mean. And those are the issues that we need to return our attention to. Let them continue their discussions. By that, I mean the politicians around ethnicity and religion, but we need to be clear about what we want. We want those developmental challenges addressed. Any candidate that speaks to us and we are able to align with the messaging that that candidate is delivering to us should be the candidate that we should go for. Those that want to focus on religion and ethnicity, let them focus on it. And we show them in February and in March that we've come of age. We know what we really want.
Well, Kabir, Adamu, and Abimbola, Ayuba, it's a fine place for us to say many thanks for being such nice company on the square today. And of course, a lot of other things that Nigerians will love the government to put its finger and actually dig in deep. Flooding is one sore issue as we talk about security. Well, on the square, we'll be looking at all of that. Thank you for your time, Kabir and Abimbola, Ayuba. So from all of us here in the studios, I'd like to say thank you for watching. I'm Sulaiman.
And I'm Kamini Amano. Good night.
Bye-bye.